Okay, welcome back to Texas A&M Aggies Live, part of the Voice of College Football Network. As you can see, we have a nice new design around us. This company is starting to grow every day, which is why we just need you guys to keep listening every Tuesday and keep subscribing, pressing that like button. Joined, as always, by my co-host, Cannon Torres. We're entering the first game week of the year for Texas A&M, which is awesome. I mean, we've been previewing this team for the last – I don't even know how long, 3 months now. I think when you and I started doing the show together, when you were just a guest. So it's long awaited, and it's going to be awesome because we know how talented this team is. We both are in agreement that this is a potentially 9, 10, maybe 11 wins team if they stay healthy and they live up to the massive expectations we have for them on both sides of the ball. This week, they're going to start the season against UTSA. Roadrunners head coach Jeff Traylor has been a name that has been around Texas A&M's program before Mike Elko was hired during the last year, I guess, going into the 2023 season of Jimbo Fisher's reign as head coach. And he actually got an interview before Mike Elko was hired. And, you know, I don't know if it went well or not. We'll never really know that. But it was a long one, and many of us thought that he was a legit candidate before, obviously, the whole debacle that we're not going to spend time on with, one coach who happens to coach at the University of Kentucky, Mark Stoops, was potentially the next head coach. Then all this weird stuff happened with social media and the front office. And Mike Elko was finally hired, and now we're going into year 2 with him. So we don't. I mean, we could.
It all trickles down. It all trickles down now.
How crazy it was, but
it is game week now, Cameron. It is game week.
I'm just saying, it's funny. It's funny though, because when you go back and we're just going to the second year, I always have to think back to that night, and I'm just like, man, what a weird night as someone covering this.
It was a very, very eventful 14 hours, and
you know what? They made the right decision. That's the thing.
I still remember being up at 1:30 a.m. Discussing with one of my buddies on what was going on and everything like that. But that is a conversation for a different time. I think we're going to start off.
Probably conversation for never. I don't think we're going to talk about it anymore.
But UTSA, it's game week. It's week 1. We are ready for the Aggies to take the field. So we are going to go and preview this game against the Roadrunners. So 6 p.m. Saturday. It's going to be going on just about the same time as a whole lot of other matchups. I believe LSU and Clemson is on at the same time. But we all know that every single Aggie is going to be tuning into this one instead. UTSA has some veterans on their offensive side. I think we'll start off right there, see where the Aggies are going to be matched up against their offense as well. If you want to take the reins with who they have at quarterback, I know it's a name that people may have heard before, but definitely a football legacy.
Yeah, going into his, I believe it's his redshirt sophomore year, might be junior. I might have to look, but Owen McCowan, who, again, you know the McCowan name, a former certain Texas A&M starting quarterback with the last name McCowan. That family is huge, and they have produced a handful of NFL quarterbacks. Owen is the son of Josh McCown. I think you all know who that is. One of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm trying to think. He's serving as an assistant coach somewhere right now. But yes, that is Josh McCown's son, who was a Colorado commit, actually played for the Buffaloes for, I believe, 1 season before transferring to UTSA. Had a very good year last year, threw for over 3,400 yards, I believe, 25 touchdowns to the air. 10 interceptions, very efficient. This was the 7-6 UTSA team. So I'm not going to, again, that was the team with, I think, more talent on it last year. There were a lot of departures. Obviously, guys graduating and just leaving the program. That's common in Group of 5. Most of the time in the transfer portal, obviously the bigger Power 4 programs are going to take from the Group of 5. That's just how it is. But sometimes, and we're going to get to a couple players, it's the opposite, right? Some guys just are not ready or are not playing very well in the Power 4, even though they were highly ranked recruits. So you are going to see some of those guys, including a former Texas A&M wide receiver who's now a linebacker who will be starting for UTSA. But to stick on McCown, he's a very efficient passer. He's somebody who can be a playmaker. Very tough, like his dad. I would say the toughness factor is going to be something you'll see. I think A&M's dealt with that over the last couple of years, facing some of these group of 5 quarterbacks who just will stay in the pocket, take hits, get in a rhythm. And even though the talent around them is not great, they're going to keep playing hard. And the score is usually going to still be lopsided, but it's going to show a pretty good stat line for that QB outside of, them throwing pick sixes and, just getting outclassed, let's say, by a secondary that's just so good that they can't handle the coverages. But I don't know if that's going to be the case this year, because I think we've been talking about it throughout the offseason that A&M secondary has gotten better. They've been praised throughout preseason camp by Coach Mike Elko, defensive coordinator Jay Bateman, obviously Jordan Peterson, who's a huge part of this program's recruiting, has done a fantastic job getting these guys ready. And Lyle Hemphill, who was one of the better additions in college football, in my opinion. James Madison's defensive coordinator last season did a very good job with that program. I think they were a top 10, top 15 defense, maybe even higher.
Top 5, my friend.
Top 5. Okay, you're actually right. I'm probably thinking to somebody else, but that's the thing. And he obviously has this connection serving under Mike Elko during his time at Duke. So I do think that McCown will have a decent game. And again, I don't know a lot about their new receiving core. I'll have to do more of my homework this week. As you know, those of us who cover this team, we have to really start preparing for every opponent. Probably that Thursday, Fridays when we really dig in to really know, so that when we do cover on game day, it's a little easier to kind of understand who you're facing. But right now, you know a lot about their running back, but McCown is going to be somebody who I think they're going to give him a game plan, which is, I wouldn't say it's vanilla, but it's more, let's try to establish the run first. And if we can get that done, we're going to start taking deep shots. And that's a lot of the time where, if you play a Texas A&M or even a Texas or anybody at this first game of the season, you're hoping for rust, right? You're hoping for those opening season, like the team gets out of the, just runs out of the gate, excited, high on adrenaline. And sometimes that, that creates mistakes, early mistakes, like blown coverages, being down 7-0 quickly, just at the, just randomly off of a broken coverage or a big play on the ground or something like that, or allowing the opponent to just trickle down the field and score an opening touchdown. And then you're kind of like, okay, now we have to play. And that's when, the Aggies or anybody else really starts getting going. But anyways, I think McCown's going to be great. I think he's going to have a decent game, and I think he's going to have a good season overall. But let's talk about that star running back for the Roadrunners, who you, I think is a couple shows ago, defended very, very well. I will say that, when I kind of made a stupid crack at no names or anybody else, but you were right. So.
Hey, I can never say that every football player, anybody on any team is a no name, because they have a chance to show everybody up before that. So I'm always going to guard myself before. Yeah. But in terms of being a star, I do think he's more of the go-to player that UTSA is going to look for in this game if they can try and get a rushing game going. I mean, so for people who don't know what I'm talking about, this is Robert Henry Jr. So he's I believe, redshirt senior this year. He's about 5'9", so he's a little on the shorter side when it comes to running backs, but he's all of 205 pounds, and he's very, very well seasoned and experienced when it comes to the rushing game. I mean, his career at UTSA, I believe he transferred up to UTSA, so he's only been there since the start of last season, and he's only gotten a little bit better. He's had consistent carries. He's averaged around 128 carries per season. But he saw a big uptick in yards of rushing from 588 to, I believe, just over 700 for the Roadrunners this past season. And one thing that does stick out to me in those 2 seasons, he has not fumbled the ball at all for UTSA. And I believe he's played in pretty much all of those games. So it's just more of a model of consistency that UTSA has had back there as a running back. I believe second on their depth chart is going to be William Henderson III, who is a little bit of that same consistency, but you're really going to see a lot of touches if they can go to Robert Henry Jr. So that's one thing to look out for in this game. I think another one, and we can get to the wide receiver group too. I think that their main focus for the wide receiver group, and it's going to be really fun because I do believe Will Lee the third is going to be matched up on him, even though he is an X-style wide receiver, is Willie McCoy the third. Mm-hmm. Willie McCoy last season, I believe, led them in receiving yards, but that can be a little bit of leading. Their leading receiving yards leader, even though it was Willie McCoy, only had about 540 yards of receiving overall. And I don't think anybody really got close to above 500 or 450 last season for them besides Willie McCoy. So he's the one that I'd be looking at as that type of, if they need to throw the ball to, or when they throw the ball, McCown's going to be looking his way for his first read most of the time.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. It's, we all, for those of us who have, I would think this will be my fourth or fifth opener, I believe, for covering with Aggies Wire. So I got to think back. I mean, I think it's my third. I think my first was 2022 season. I got to think back. I think that was Sam Houston, I believe. But you got to, yeah. I mean, but there's always, I'm getting my point is there's always a cyclical nature to these games, right? There's always, like I mentioned earlier, like one team's just going to be slow out of the gate, or they're just going to be too high on adrenaline, or they're just going to be too excited. I don't think that's going to be A&M this year, just in my opinion. I think that because of who Mike Elko is as the head coach and his determination to not, let the rah hype, we're going to do this, we're going to do that before the games even start type of thing with record predictions or whatever. He's just focused on each game. He knows at UTSA, he mentioned it during Monday's presser, that they're very talented. He said that like 5 or 6 times. And I saw a lot of people going, yeah, say talented one more time. He did that on purpose, right? He's not just repeating himself. He's trying to let the fan base and that team that they're going to face know, we know how talented you are. We know how good you are. We know that you have the capability to put points on the board. Now, what he said about the defense, which we're about to get to after we mention, and you can go into their other top receiving target, College Station product tight end. But it's just one of those games where, and I am glad that I've seen most of the Aggie fan base really say like, well, no, this isn't like a random opener. This is UTSA, who's been one of the better group of 5 teams in the country over the past 5 seasons. I think Trailers led them to 5 consecutive bowl games. So and again, mentioned at the top of the show, he was a legit candidate to be Texas A&M's next head coach at one point. So he's not some, schlub who's just trying to get money to play these big games. Like a lot of people say when these smaller schools go into a Kyle Field or, LSU or Alabama, or whatever you want to say about going into SEC home games. But it's just going to be one of those games that I think is going to prove that Elko is the guy, that this is a serious program that is sick of everybody, because we know that this game is going to be on ESPN. We know that there are certain fan bases that are going to be peeking in because they want to see A&M slip up or, prove their own preconceived conceptions that this team isn't as good as we've been saying or whatever. Well, guess what? I think that they all know that, and they're ready to come out and, part of my French, kick their ass. And I think that's just one of the things that a lot of people aren't saying. They're always looking at the other opponent going, well, they can do this. They can't. Well, what about A&M? What about the running back room that could literally have a banner day and just run all over this Roadrunners defense, which is, as we're going to talk about, brand new. I mean, there's only a couple names that we know. But anyways, we'll end with the defense, but talk about McCown's other receiving target, who Mike Elko also kind of pointed out of, very proud of him coming out of the area, now starring with the Roadrunners.
Yeah, so Mike Elko had some comments and some really good things to say about UTSA's tight end, Houston Thomas, who is from the College Station area here in town. So it's always good to see a familiar face. But he is, I believe he's coming up on his 4th year of college ball. So he's going to be entering his senior season with the Roadrunners. And he had a better more than a breakout year last year at tight end. He had about 34 catches for 470 yards and 3 touchdowns for the Roadrunners, and it's pretty good stats coming from a tight end who was playing in the American at that time. So I believe he had a game against Tulsa where he had 132 yards. He had 2 touchdowns against Memphis. So he really did kind of show himself to the Roadrunners, saying that, hey, I am one of your targets now that you can trust. And I think he was named to the John Mackey Award watch list as well for this upcoming season. So not only are we going to be previewing him, but it looks like people nationally are going to keep an eye on him as well. So he's been noted that his leadership skills now going into his 4th year are a big thing. He is able to, I believe he just dressed down into one of the single-digit jerseys for UTSA, which is a pretty good team honor, I believe. But yeah, he came in a little bit slim and he's bulked up. He's around 245 pounds as of now. So,
which is a good weight for a tight end.
That's a very, very good weight for a tight end. So, with Mike Elko's defense, I'm really wondering in certain sets if that's going to be Torian York going to be having to play on the outside, or if that's going to be Tyreek Chappelle, who we're going to go over later on our depth chart, who's going to be matched up on Houston Thomas.
That leads into an interesting topic, and I know that this came up pre-show and really just popped in my head again. The inability to cover tight ends was a big issue last season. So we do know that Harold Fannin Jr., who's now in the NFL with Bowling Green during A&M's, 26-20 win over Bowling Green, which very random game, right? One of the more random games that I have to actually go back and go, man, what happened then? It's very odd, right? Either way, A&M won, so it doesn't really matter. But he had over, I have to say, he led the team by a large.
I believe it was 140 something.
It was something around there, right? And there were a couple breakaways. And see, covering big tight ends like that, and I'm not saying he's Harold Fannin, right? Harold Fannin was a freak of nature. He was one of those.
He's very good.
Yeah, very, very good. Very, very good. Going to have, I think, a very good NFL career. So I'm not saying that Houston is in the same realm, but he is somebody who, if you don't, well, no, he's good though. And that's the thing. If you don't have a plan to cover him, especially in the seam, it is going to be interesting, right? Do you put a Torian York against him? Do you put Scooby Williams against? Do you put even a Damian Radford, who's more twitchy and a little fat? Probably not, though, right? But you're probably looking at those first 2 options. That's what I would say. And I would say maybe Scooby because he's a little bigger, but at the same time, I think Torian has proved even undersized he can cover those guys. But either way, they cannot have broken coverages by a tight end, right? That would not be good, and that's happened a lot over the past couple of years, and that was a big problem, obviously, with Jay Bateman's defense. The biggest change to this offseason was that Mike Elko is now calling defensive plays. So I think that he's going to avoid that, but it has been a weird kind of wrinkle in what teams have been able to do against A&M. Like it is all, we always see that because overall, I was listening to another podcast earlier, and there was somebody, not going to name them, but they were talking about, A&M's secondary ranking was poor in the SEC last year, even though it finished, in a pretty decent territory nationally. Yeah. So that just shows you how good the SEC has been in coverage, right? That just shows you how dominant they've been because of the recruiting and because of the development. If A&M can finish in top 3 in pass defense this year in the SEC, they're doing pretty well, and they're probably going to finish very high nationally. And that's just, again, preventing these type of games. So that's why, because, obviously UTSA is the team that has the more talent in terms of those specific players that could show out compared to a Utah State in week 2, right? We're not going to have a ton to look at compared to UTSA. They just have former Power 4 players who are, talented enough to show out any week, right?
I think that's
another.
I think there are some players that have kind of trickled down to UTSA in terms of the talent composite that they've been able to accumulate over the past 2 transfer cycles. So another person we can get into is on their defense, and I think A&M is going to be very, very familiar with a player like Shadrack Banks, who just after, I believe, a semester or 2 at A&M, originally a wide receiver, he ended up transferring to TCU ahead of their championship run season where he got some pretty good play, but he switched to linebacker over at TCU. Had a good season in 2023, I believe 65 plus tackles. But injuries did slow him down. So he ended up transferring to UTSA last year. And now is, I believe, is going to be their starting Mike linebacker.
And Kendrick Blackshear is another name that, I mean, it's just really crazy when you look down these lists and you look back on recruiting cycles, and there are well-known names that you kind of forget about because they leave their first team, they transfer a couple times, and then you kind of lose track. And those are two guys but I'm going to be honest, get credit to Shadrick. I believe he goes by Shad now. So
Shad,
look, it's incredible when you switch from wide receiver to linebacker. That's very impressive. I mean, not a lot of people can switch positions just late in their career.
It's also very hard to go from wide receiver to Mike linebacker.
Exactly, especially with the play. I mean, you're basically the quarterback of the defense. So at the same time, you have to really train hard. You have to be in the film room all the time. You have to really, gain new instincts. And granted, it is when you are a wide receiver, you understand defense. It's kind of like defenses, like cornerbacks understand wide receivers. They kind of understand each other type of thing. So I think that he always had the ability to do that. It's really crazy because he is a productive player and he is somebody that you do have to study. And it's the same with Kendrick Blackshear, who both very talented players who it just didn't work out, right? I think you said he was with TCU. Blackshear was at Alabama for I believe a couple seasons.
He was over there for a hot minute, transferred to Texas. Where I believe there was only a lot of play from him on the special team side where he recorded a couple tackles, but I don't think he ever got the stuff he needed, as well as hurt his Achilles. I don't know specifically what ended up transpiring there. Maybe it was something that happened with Alabama and Texas, but he decided to transfer to UTSA, where I believe he kind of he only played like 3 games, right? Yeah. And now he gets that fresh start this year under your trailer. So he could be a sideline to sideline kind of linebacker. We don't know yet.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think, unless you have anyone else to mention, I think this is, Elko basically said, we just don't know yet, right? We just don't know. It's going to take the entire week. We're going to have to really study, like, what players do we need to point out that could be threats against the run, that, quarterback safety, that could be an issue. But
I mean, the only thing that I think I can point out right now is when I look at UTSA's offensive line, they are an experienced bunch. That's it. They have, if I look right now, senior, redshirt junior in Houston Thomas over at tight end, but he's going to be blocking for them. Junior at center, senior at left guard, senior at left tackle. So they are a very, very experienced bunch when it comes to their offensive line. So that just goes back to what I was saying about their run game. If they can get that started with Robert Henry, I think that they're going to kind of dial it back a little bit and try and get that run game started.
Yeah, they don't want McCowan to be dropping back the entire, because I think if McCowan's dropping back every play, they're done. Right? They're in a bad position. That's usually the kid. That's what A&M wants. They want to get that kid having to pass almost every play if they can just shut down the run immediately. Which, again, I think that's the biggest thing you and I are looking for. I think everybody's kind of looking for that. And I just did a piece about Albert Regis today. Is Albert Regis, DJ Hicks, Tyler Oniedem, are these going to be the dudes that are just going to just man up that middle and just shut anything down to those gaps? We'll see, right? We'll see. I think Regis is going to be the leader in that. I think that he's probably the most trustworthy right now. I do think Oniedem, with his experience at Iowa State and that 3-4 defense, is going to be probably the second most trustworthy. But again, DJ Hicks hasn't really shown a ton yet. This is a big year for him. If he shows out, I think this is the game to do it. I think just right out of the gate, prove that this is going to be the group all season, barring injury, obviously, because there isn't a ton of depth behind them. Obviously, there's Dylan Evans, who had a good preseason, still very young, and then you've got a lot of youth behind them that I think will see the field early. I think these first 2 games are good, especially if you get up by a certain amount. There's times where you're going to see this depth, which would be great, to be honest with you. I would love to see the younger guys get in and see what they have. But this is going to be a defense game, right? I think that A&M is going to score points. I think we can really just say I cannot wait to see Casey Concepcion on the field and catching his first pass. I think Kyle Fields going to be rocking if you just see a huge chunk gain, just a short pass to Concepcion, for 25 yards. I think that's really going to get this offense going, and I really can't wait to see how this run game looks, because they talked about Mike Elko also talked about that on Monday, talking about him and Trooper Taylor have a hard job in front of them, right? Because these first 2 games are going to be essential to figuring out that snap count allotment for 4 to 5 running backs, right? It's because Jamarian Morrow, their freshman back, has been lights out in preseason. And I was kind of thinking about last night when I was writing about it. I was like, man, how are they going to do this? This is going to be very interesting, because Le'Veon Moss, I think he's going to play in a snap count in this game, which is smart. I think that you don't need to throw him out there every play. And then obviously behind him, Ruben Owens, Amari Daniels, and E.J. Smith are going to be the majority. And then I think you throw in Morrow if you're up by a certain amount. Same with kind of all the rotations. So.
Oh, yeah. I think you're probably right. I mean, that's the snap count on Moss is definitely smart when it comes to this game. You probably will see a lot more of the workload just be Ruben Owens and Amari Daniels in this game. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're going to want to see as much out of Morrow as we maybe project him to be, even though he is listed on the depth chart we'll get to later on as one of their main returning guys on the team. So he's going to be returning, I believe, kick returns?
Kick returns.
We'll get to that. We'll
see that at the end. It's an or type situation.
I think that you will see more likely than not a lot of snaps from Amari Daniels and Ruben Owens in this game.
Yeah.
It's just going to be very, very consistent overall. That's what you're looking for in this game. You want to establish exactly who you are. Your identity that you've said all offseason to be is in this run game, so it opens up for Marcel Reed. Bar none, that's how it's going to be. Yeah. So barring injury, I don't see a lot of that happening, and we'll get to some injuries later on, though.
Yeah. Either way, I think that this is a very good opener for them. I was actually very excited that this was the opener instead of, Stephen F. Austin or somebody like that, right? Not like a team that A&M's going to beat by just automatically by looking. It's going to be a 45-10 type of game. I just think that this is a nice challenge for them at least. I think it's good for the defense that's been lauded all offseason of the improvement. Well, now it's time to see it, right? Because there's going to be some people who maybe don't really know a lot about UTSA, and they just expect that A&M just going to run them over, and they should beat them because they're UTSA and you're A&M, which the whole helmet thing is always funny to me that it's like people just go, well, you are you and they're them, so they should do this. It's like, okay. But either way, this schedule couldn't prepare them better, I think, for obviously Notre Dame in week 3, which we will cover that before that game happens. But and as we did last week with Michael. But I think it just prepares you for the challenges ahead, especially with that game, and then having the bye week, and then you start really the SEC schedule just hits you in the face. And there's a lot of unknowns there, right? So you need to establish who you are over these first 2 weeks. And I'm glad that at least starts with a challenge, because you will have moments in this game where bad stuff will happen. And you have to figure out, okay, we need to get back to form. We need to fix the fixable. And I think that's just very good for what they plan to do this season, because we've seen a lot of the time that, and even with A&M, teams start out very slow. They make a lot of mistakes, even though they win by 30. And that's actually what I was alluding to. You think back to 2022 when A&M lost to App State. I think it was I think it was Sam Houston. I think they beat them like 4. And again, this is a different coaching staff, so it's not the same. But it was always interesting when Jimbo Fisher after that game basically said, "Yeah, we're not ready," and then they go out and lose to App State. So it's like that stuff does happen where you need to face every opponent like you're an SEC play on the road. You just cannot let up at all. So it's going to be interesting, because look, I would like them to run up the score a little bit. I would like them to score a lot and really put their foot down and prove like we're one of the best teams. We're one of the best offenses in the SEC. We're one of the best defenses. We don't care who you are. We're going to keep doing this every week. And that's what I want to see. And I do want to see, obviously, Marcel Reed take that next step. I want to see confidence. I want to see great blocking up front, because the one thing I think is guaranteed is that this run game is going to be humming.
It's going to be dominant, and I think
I'm not.
we're gonna see it played out on the field, and
Yeah.
we honestly can't wait. So, speaking of things that we want to see, we're gonna have to get into some things we don't want to see, and that is injuries to players that we thought were going to provide a very, very meaningful spark for this A&M squad. And I guess we'll start off with the injuries that Mike Elko addressed in his press conference here this past Monday. First of all, that five-star freshman from Draper, Utah, Jerome Myles, is going to be out for the season with a lower leg injury. So he kind of give us a rundown on his comments.
Yeah, so it wasn't a shock that there were injuries. I think you and I had both discussed off camera that there were some rumors, going around about Jerome Myles in a way that, we didn't know if maybe a staff member had been saying them or something, because that does happen every offseason that there's an injury. We saw it with Ruben Owens. I think an outside national person was the first one to report it. So that stuff happens. They try to keep things internal, but sometimes things just leak out. But to be honest, they did a good job to keep this internal. It sucks for that young man. I was very excited to see him in a rotation this year. He wasn't going to play a ton. I don't think Myles was going to crack. I think he was going to be more of the 5 or 6 option, if healthy, right? We just didn't know how healthy. He looked healthy for the most part during those preseason clips we saw. But again, you just don't know, right? You don't know until the season starts. You don't know until you see these guys in week 1. You just don't know. And I am glad that Elko did keep these private, and that what's really terrible though for Jerome Myles is that this is 2 years in a row that you're ending your football season, and it really does break my heart, because when you're a competitor and an elite player like he is, you want to play as much as possible. So having to end prematurely, especially before your first season, it's horrible. But at the same time, I think our buddy Jackson Callaway kind of pointed that out, that if you are going to get injured, probably the best time to do it, because you're going to have the full season to heal, and you're going to be ready by preseason.
Definitely a glass half full way.
That's how you have to look at it, right? You have to, right? It sucks.
You have to look at it, but I do believe that A&M fans are kind of a little bit more used to it than normal at this point.
That's also the sad part, yeah.
But while as sad as it is, we do wish him a speedy recovery, as well as Papa Afua, who is also going to be out for a considerable amount of time for this season as well, also with a lower leg injury that he is addressing as well.
Yeah. So when I was putting together my projected depth chart earlier this week, before the official one was released today, I did not include him in there. We didn't heard a lot from him. We had not heard pretty much anything about him during the preseason. And I kind of came to the conclusion, okay, well, something's not right here, right? This is kind of the same thing we've heard with previously injured players. They just don't talk about them. They're just eliminated from conversation. And until someone brings it up, like if someone asks, hey, what's going on with him, then you may get a straight answer, may not. But obviously dealing with an injury as well. If you're looking at injury news from a position standpoint, obviously they're very deep at O-line. They're very deep at guard. They know that guys like Ashton Funk, Blake Ivy, they've got a ton of depth there. Lamont Rogers, they're 5-star freshmen. They're not worried in that aspect. But obviously this is a potential future starter, a potential rotational player who brings a lot of power in the run game, somebody who was deemed to take the next step in his development. So again, just kind of having to go backwards for these guys, it sucks. I hate it from a football standpoint, because it does, you have to start over essentially. It's the same with, and we're about to get to Le'Veon Moss. So either way, those two, if you have to look at glass half full, it could be worse. That's all I got to say. It could be worse from a veteran perspective, if you were losing someone very important to your starting offense or defense. Not to say that Jerome Myles wouldn't have, made a huge impact this season. We don't know, right? But we do know he's going to make an impact down the road. So, this was more of a reserve type thing. Is like they're probably looking at it the same way, is that it's horrible that he's injured. It's horrible he's going to miss a season, but he is our future star. So we know he's going to be a future star. And we know that the way that Colin Klein wants to design this offense with him and future quarterback Helaman Kasuga, for example, it's just the thing you have to deal with. But getting Le'Veon Moss, obviously, he spoke to the media today during the player availability. It was him and new defensive end Deion Hayes. And he, outside of saying he's 100%, which is fantastic, and this is one of the more mature players I've heard speak, ask questions to in the past, etc. So it's always a joy to hear from him, to be honest with you. And he revealed that his 2024 leg injury was actually, he tore his ACL and MCL in that game versus South Carolina. He actually talked about how what happened in the play, that he was going out of bounds. And, the hit was low. It was just a bad angle. And he was just writhing in pain. I think we all kind of paused there and just said, oh.
Can we just talk about how, insane that is to tear your MCL and ACL?
It's insane. It's insane.
And then come back in the short order that he did with those two injuries. That just blows my mind. So clap here for being able to come back from that injury as fast as he did. So, and then kudos for the A&M recovery staff as well, kind of treating him right.
Yeah.
And getting him fully ramped up for this first game as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had some very, very interesting comments on that. And then definitely saying that, hey, I don't want to go out of bounds. I want to be able to meet the defender head on. I don't want to be afraid of anyone who's going to be coming at me. So
that's the best thing you can say, though. And it's true, though. I mean, you want to push back. And I mean, it's not that it's going to prevent injury, but you just want to, use those shoulder pads and just get in there and get him off. And hopefully he doesn't get, not a cheap hit, but just a low hit. And to be honest, we've seen that in the past. I knew what it was immediately, did not know it was an ACL and an MCL, and didn't go into if it was a full tear, I believe it was. Partial.
No, it was a partial.
It was partial. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, I had some questions about that. He didn't go into details, but I was guessing it was partial, because if it was full, I think it would have been a longer recovery. But no, either way, it's insane. I mean, but it does show that Mike Elko was very smart in his planning around this. And that, I mean, we've seen, like Miami Dolphins and other staffs in the past really fumble when it comes to player recovery and stuff like that, and especially in this day and age where you have all the technology, you have all the information now to prevent these and obviously help in rehab. And so kudos to their staff for diagnosing, getting ahead of this immediately, and going into the offseason knowing, look, he's not going to see live action. Like, we're gonna work him out, we're gonna rehab him completely going into the summer, not participating in any 11-on-11, not in the scrimmage. And guess what? Now he's 100%. And he's 100%, because I still saw people thinking, well, maybe he's not 100%. No. He basically confirmed that today, and he said it the best way. He said, I wouldn't be out there if I wasn't 100%. So that's definitive. That's because I care more about my health and my future than playing in a football game where I could get re-injured. So he's completely healthy. It's insane. Credit to him as well, man. I mean, he's just a superhero if he can do that.
He's in the right mind space with this, too. Like, he wants to be able to perform for himself and for everybody watching as well, for the staff, literally everybody. So a consummate professional from Le'Veon, especially with his comments today. So
I'd say, it's the craziest thing I think I've heard in a while. Definitely this entire offseason, that when he said that. And he said it very nonchalantly, too. He was just like, yeah, I tore both. And it's like, what? It's like,
hold up. You didn't have
November. It's like, jeez.
Yeah, no, so we are very ready for Moss to hit the field this weekend. He's at the top of the depth chart when it comes to A&M squad. So we're going to go right into this depth chart that was released today by Texas A&M. So on your screen now, you're going to be able to see the full depth chart. One thing we are going to preface, and I know some of it is going to be covered up, but one thing we will preface is that a lot of this list is in alphabetical order. So some of the people, when you do the or section, you're going to see a lot of players with either or. That's not necessarily saying that they are the bona fide fourth on the depth chart or anything like that, and we'll get into that later. But what is covered up first, and it was announced by Mike Elko yesterday, up at the top. So Marcel Reed is your starting quarterback for the Aggies, as we knew going into the season. A lot of the conversation, and we had on this show, was the backup quarterback competition. You brought in a seventh-year quarterback to compete for that backup job with Miles O'Neill, and Miles O'Neill did end up taking that QB2 job if anything were to happen to Marcel Reed. So he's going to be your QB2. Jacob Zeno is going to most likely be your QB3 for the time being in the season. Same goes for the usual suspects at running back. You're really going to see a lot of Le'Veon Moss as the starter, Ruben Owens following behind, kind of splitting that running back 2 reps with Amari Daniels, and then EJ Smith and Jamarian Morrow in the or spots next to each other. So overall thoughts on either one of those, Cameron?
Really not a surprise. Obviously, we heard yesterday that Miles O'Neill took the number 2 job. That wasn't shocking at all. We saw he was getting majority of those reps outside of Marcel Reed as a starter. But again, he's one of the bigger arms on the team. Looked a little more accurate this season. I think there's a higher floor with him, and I think the staff sees that if something were to happen to Marcel this season, but obviously, this is somebody who they feel like can get in there and seamlessly take over. He does have some ability in the run game. He's been shown even in his high school days in Massachusetts that he can make plays out of structure. He's kind of got that, Ruben Owens gazelle type running, Max Johnson-esque as a runner. But he can get it done. He could end up being a very productive player. I think his future, either with A&M or somebody else potentially, is very, very bright. Either way, I think the biggest thing that stood out was a tight end. Ostrom, as the starter is very interesting to me. I actually had Nate Burkircher never as one of the starters, mainly due to his blocking ability.
See, I had Theo starting.
Okay, so that's and you know what that means? That's a good sign, right? That means that, and he discussed actually early, I think it was last week, talking about his blocking skill set and how he's been working on that all summer. Obviously, one of the tallest players on the team at 6'6". What an elite route runner, I will say. Like, you go back, he just kind of has to refine it. But somebody who can get open, he's shown that before. He just needs to catch the ball more consistently. But he is somebody who they feel in this scheme could break out this season. So I'm not completely shocked. I am a little surprised that Nate is lower on the depth chart. But really filling out in terms of the O-line, I don't think you're surprised there. I think that we all predicted this was going to be the starting O-line.
You're really not. I think people were kind of surprised to see it more have been a Mark Naboo versus Cody Fayu kind of matchup. But from what I've heard, Mark Naboo kind of ran away with that starting center job over the course of the past couple of weeks. So your starters along the line, Trey Zune has taken some snaps at center. That's why that or is there again with Mark Naboo, but he's mainly only going to be at that left tackle spot unless something drastic were to happen. Jace Basanis at left guard, we knew that was going to happen. Armaje Reed-Adams over at right guard. We're really, really happy to see what kind of season he could have, as he's had a lot of NFL draft buzz. And Demetrius Crownover, full on 6'6", 336 pounds over on right tackle. So very, very veteran group with graduates, redshirt sophomores, junior, and a graduate over on the left side as well. So we're really kind of looking forward to that.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that Ruben Fowlerly, who's going to miss a couple weeks, obviously with injury, him being the most likely primary backup left tackle was very smart. Getting him in that position, he's been able to play both tackle spots. Obviously, he's been practicing there. Robert Borden, I forget how big he is, at 6'6" as the backup right tackle. So that's another name that I think a lot of people kind of forgot about. But they've got adequate depth there. A&M's got so much size. It's one of the biggest O-lines in the country, and even in their depth, it's pretty incredible that if they can get these guys up to their potential, like lights out for the future, right? I think that Adam Cushion's going to keep recruiting at a high rate, and I think he's got a type. And you're not going to get a Lamont Rogers every year, obviously, someone an elite O-line prospect. But either way, I think they're in great shape, and none of this was really too surprising. So moving on to the defense. Any shock there, really? Because I will say, and I'll let you get in on this. The D line made perfect sense. I predicted this lineup. Obviously, with Albert Reed just said nose tackle. He's the definite standard there. Defensive end, I did think Deion Hayes was going to be one of the starters because of his preseason. I think he was fantastic. He actually spoke today. And I think if you keep speaking to the media, I think it kind of shows like you're probably one of the starters. But yeah, outside of that, a couple of the depth pieces at cornerback. But again, I think I'll say this. I'd love to see it that Willie and Des Ricks are going to be starting outside corners together because we've heard so much about Des Ricks' improvement, and we've seen video, we've seen him live practice, and just the confidence level of this young man. I think he's going to take a big step forward this season.
Yeah, definitely one that I'm looking at this depth chart. I'm going, oh, that's actually a really, really good sign for Aggie fans. So if you're looking at this and you are just kind of like, oh, I hated what I saw on the defensive back side in the last couple of games of the season, Des Ricks would not be in that starting role starting this next game if the coaching staff did not feel like he had a legitimate rise this preseason so far. So that is really, really, really good to see. I think one thing I am looking at too is that cornerback 2 role right under is true freshman Adonis Curry from California. I think he's turned a couple of heads during practice so far. So he's kind of, I wouldn't say solidified himself in that backup role, but they are not afraid to put him in if needs be. So the over-the-top safety, I am not as surprised as I usually would be.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that Dalton Brooks and Marcus Ratcliffe have kind of shown the flashes that they can be on the field together, but you kind of need that game manager that you would in the linebacking core, but this time in the safety as that roaming free safety that Bryce Anderson is. So that veteran leadership back there is really, really good to see. So overall thoughts on the safety room and kind of how that's being laid out for us so far.
Yeah, I was a little surprised, but I think you kind of nailed it there with Dalton Brooks. I think that's the reason he's the starter. I think it's just the athleticism. You can't keep him off the field. He's just too athletic, and he's shown that ability to go sideline to sideline, and has the ability to be an elite coverage type of safety if he just finds consistency. But yeah, Marcus Ratcliffe, who's had a very, very strong preseason, obviously in that or spot. I think that this is going to be a rotation. You're going to see both players in the field a lot. So I think that, especially in certain packages, I think that Ratcliffe offers a lot of size. He offers that thumping type of tackling that could be a very a benefactor in the run game. But yeah, I think the biggest thing you pointed out was Adonis Curry, that he has really shot up kind of under the radar too. I think we kind of heard his name a couple times, but if your freshman is playing like that, and I do remember he took a dip in the recruiting rankings at one time, and when he committed, he was a higher ranked recruit when A&M got his commitment, and then he kind of dipped down, and we didn't hear a ton about him. That's recruiting always, that's how it works, but that's fantastic to see that, and he's got a ton of potential, especially in this scheme. But overall, in terms of nickel, I think that having Tyrod Chappelle, Bravion Rogers, and Jordan Shaw as your main options is as good as it gets. I think that just shows
absolutely.
Yeah, because Bravion Rogers, we talked about the kind of drum beat, getting louder and louder for him. This is a young man who's been in the program for a couple of years. He came from a very small school, somebody who I think that if he played at a bigger program in high school, probably would have been a 5-star prospect just based on his traits and his length. He's kind of built like Des Ricks in that way, and somebody who has just shown the ability to be one of the better man coverage guys and thrive in that nickel spot. And having depth finally at a position that killed you last year is just automatically like you can be so confident going into the season now, because you had so many question marks after Tyree Chappelle went down last season. And really, we're just kind of throwing things there. It's like you had to figure it out mid-season when teams were throwing all over you, and you just had to figure that spot out. And they did for a little bit, but the fact that Tyree Chappelle looks healthy, He looks ready to go. And Jordan Shaw has had a very good preseason, and having Bravion Rogers finally take that next step is just massive for this program. So overall, we can't get into the defensive line. I think the jack position, Cassius out obviously there with Rylan Kennedy, but the or with Marco Jones, again, just showing that, Jones is going to be a player I expect to see in week one. I think that they're going to try to get him on the field immediately just to kind of see what he can bring. I think that's one of those positions that Cassius Howell is your definite leader. Rylan Kennedy has shown those, moments where he just has to put it together in a consistent package. But I think this pass rush could be sneaky great. And there's just a lot of potential. There's a lot of size, there's a lot of speed, and there's a lot of athleticism. So either way, you probably feel pretty good about where this defensive line is in terms of what the rotation looks like, I would perceive.
Yeah, definitely. I feel good. I think you have kind of laid it out for everyone to be like, hey, these are why they're laid out with the or signs on here.
Yeah.
I think that Marco Jones and he's been named to kind of some preseason freshman watch lists that we discussed last week. He's going to be in a large part. I think we do need to see some flashes from him this season. He may play 4+ games. I don't know if they're going to want to try and burn that red shirt from them this season. But overall, I think this is kind of the usual suspects that we would think would be the starters. Ashton Bethel-Roman did secure that spot along the wide receiver 3, but we know Terry Bussey's going to work in with him and Mario Craver. I think Concepcion has solidified his spot as that is his, and we can kind of mix and match the others when needed per play.
Yeah, I will say the last thing on the defensive end, having Dan Hayes, Solomon Williams, TJ Searcy, and Samuel Mpemba is – you really couldn't ask for better in terms of twitchy athletes who Mpemba, the way he moves, just this. I mean, looks like a wide receiver half the time he's out there. So
he legitimately, he worked as a tight end in high school, my friend.
Yeah. So I just think that, it's not definite production outside of Hayes, who has had his injury issues, but does have more production. And one of the reasons he's a starter. But Solomon Williams flashed late last season. He was a name that we at Aggies WR and a couple other people kind of mentioned early in the offseason. Didn't hear a ton, but obviously he's been putting in the work. He's earned that spot in the rotation. So it just shows the potential there. And I think that's what they want. I think that having a coach like Mike Elko, who has been able to develop these type of pass rushers in the past, and especially at corner, I think this is just the perfect depth chart for him. That, having all those oars there is probably just exciting for him, knowing there's just so much we can mix and match. We're going to throw this team out against UTSA, but if we have to change things up a little bit based on obviously performances and what we think is the best rotation on offense and defense, we can easily do that because we just got a ton of talent and we got a ton of potential here. So overall, I think that fans and they're gonna think what they want about it. I think the biggest thing at kicker was kind of interesting with Randy Bond or Jared Zirkle. Jared Zirkle has the biggest leg on the team. Actually, his kicking coach, who I had a long discussion with a couple years ago when he committed A&M, we were going back and forth in DMs, and he was trying to give me the release on him committing and stuff like that. Great guy. But he just talked about the praise for Jared Zirkle. He said, this is NFL leg. And this is somebody, and I said, well, talking about the competition with Bond, he said, well, no, Bond is extremely accurate, but it's going to be tough because Zirkle's he can hit it from anywhere. It's like we've seen in the NFL with, I'm trying to think of his name, the kicker for Jacksonville who kicked like a 70-yarder.
Cam Little?
Cam Little, yeah. Like these guys were coming out of the college ranks and just
pulled that out of my butt.
Nice job. Yeah. But no, I believe Randy Bond's your kicker, but I think that it could be a situation where if they're trying to attempt a very long field goal, maybe you try it out with Jared Zirkle. I don't know. I don't think I think it is a very important position, guys. It really is. But I thought that was a little interesting. But overall, yeah, I think we summed it up pretty well. This is the best depth chart you can look at. A lot of what we thought the starting rotation would look like, that's what it really looks like. Outside of for me, tight end and a couple of spots on defense. But I was always just worried about the cornerback situation. So it is awesome to see that Desrix has made that jump and earned that starting spot. I think that's just a great, just a great sign of how this room specifically is going to look much, much better and much more.
I love it, man. I'm a huge fan of Desrix.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really, really cool to see if he lives up to that 5-star grading potential that he had coming out of high school.
Yeah.
I mean, he just really didn't play at Alabama and just wanted the opportunity. He has it here, and now he's able to show it. So,
and that's the thing. If Nick Saban wouldn't have left, he probably would have stayed at Alabama. And that shows you that Nick Saban believed in him. Nick Saban, who was a cornerback coach, defensive back coach his entire career before becoming one of the greatest, maybe the greatest college head coach of all time. That was his specialty. So he knew what Desmond had. He would have stayed there. He would have developed. He would have probably been a great player for Alabama. But he's here now. He's developing under probably one of the better secondary coaches in Jordan Peterson and Ishmael Aristide as well. And then obviously Mike Elko. So it's going to look great. And it's going to be – he's one of the players that I can't stop talking about because that room is just so important to A&M's success this season.
Yeah. Do you want to end the show off tonight with our game week predictions of UTSA?
Yeah, we can do that. We can actually talk about, obviously, maybe our predictions with the 9. We're not going to get into the 9-game schedule too much. I don't think there's a ton we need to talk about there. But who do you think A&M's permanent rivals are going to be?
9-game schedule. So for people who haven't seen before, we'll preface it here where the SEC is going to 9 games starting next season. This is all after the College Football Playoff Committee announced that they are using more advanced metrics, whatever that means, for their playoff calibration. So it's not very surprising that this would happen right after. Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, has kind of always been pushing for this 9-game schedule for the SEC to show its prowess in college football. So they ended up solidifying in stone, which means that every SEC team is going to have 3 permanent opponents for every season, and then it's going to kind of flip-flop every back and forth. Did I get all that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's more of I guess in like kingmaker type, type of terms. It's the SEC is going to be the strongest. It's always going to be the biggest. It's always going to be, the ratings grab. Like, we dominate the cycle, even though there's 3 other Power 4 teams. So it's going to, if you want parity, you're going to get parity, right? Because It's going to be up for all 16 teams, not just the bottom feeders, are going to have a tough time with this schedule, because I could see a lot of 8 and 4s, in the future. So
I think my prediction, though, as I've plugged these in myself, I was, when this was first introduced last, I believe, a year and a half ago, if this were to happen, how would it look? I messed around, so I had to look back through my notes. I was like, oh, which one did I have coming in? Because this was when Texas and Oklahoma were coming in for the first time.
Yeah,
I said obviously Texas is going to be one of those permanent opponents. I think that the SEC knows that it would probably be a disgrace if that rivalry were to not happen every other year. That one, I think that this rivalry that they've tried to not synthetically create with LSU, I think it has been a very, very good series. So LSU is probably one of my other picks. And I really do think it's going to be Arkansas at the end of the day. Yep. As much as I would love to see it be Oklahoma, I think that Arkansas is probably going to be that pick. I think based on the stuff I had, there was probably like a more than 50% chance it was going to be Arkansas, LSU, and Texas when it comes down to it. There were some people who said that, hey, just shove Texas A&M to the back, where their permanent opponents are going to be Texas, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. Where, well, does that necessarily make sense with you want to keep these competitive rivalries together? So I think those will be eventually the teams.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think I do think it's going to be Texas, LSU, and Arkansas. I think that, look, you had a rivalry with Arkansas that has spanned back to the Southwest Conference, that every Aggie and every Razorback remembers how how petty both fan bases can get when it comes to that game. And even though A&M has dominated this series, I think they've only lost once over the past, 12 seasons or something. It's pretty nuts.
The last time A&M lost at Arkansas, where it's this year, I believe was back in 2011.
Yeah. Before Johnny Manziel, and then obviously when they were playing in Jerry World, they were just dominating. The only loss they had was during the 21 season, I believe. Yeah, which I still hate that game. I can't. But either way, see, there's the thing, right? It's a rivalry you can't get rid of. You have to have it. And I think that you have to have LSU. There is pure hatred between both fan bases. You and I were joking about it when I sent you one of Tiger Vibes and kind of just talking about that how we need the hate, right? Like that's just the shtick, right? You hate each other.
Tiger Vibes. We need more.
Yeah, man, to see best hater out there. One of the best haters, I will say that.
We are fans of the hate. We like it.
We do. I like it. But either way, can't get rid of that. I just think that it's going to get even better, right? I think that this rivalry is going to get better, especially if A&M becomes a consistently good program in terms of winning 9-10 games every season, or hopefully, or having those type of LSU type of seasons and then playing each other every year. But yeah, it was always going to be centered around Texas. That's never going to end again. We're never going to get rid of this rivalry again, because we've seen the money that's coming. We've seen the viewership. We've seen the merch as well for both.
Absolutely.
I mean, think about it, right? So you can't get rid of that. But one of my fantastic writer, Dylan Flippo at Aggies WR, actually put together his predictions for all 16 teams. Aggies WR is worth the read. But yeah, a lot of teams have a lot to decide, right? I think A&M's are pretty straightforward. But Texas, for example, who's that going to be outside A&M? Like that's going to be interesting too. Oklahoma, I think they have to have Texas, but who do they? Is it Missouri? Is the other? I mean, there's a lot of interesting dynamics that are in play, and so we'll obviously keep an eye out for that. But yeah, let's make those UTSA predictions right now and the show on the right note. So
yeah, let's do it. I'm going to be a little bit aggressive when it comes to this game. I think that the Aggies are going to come out home field and just put on not a full show, but up to the point of where you want a finale. So I think that in this game, I think they're more than a 24.5 point favorite when it comes to any lines. I believe that they will cover that. And I believe that they are going to probably win this game in the realm of 45-12. I really don't think that UTSA tries to even get down the field within scoring range of a touchdown. So I think they get a couple of kicks up, but that is my aggressive prediction, 45-12.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think A&M is going to score in the 40s. I think that this is going to be one of those games where the offense starts out hot. I think the run game just going to. I think it's going to be like 10-yard gain, 20-yard gain, 10-yard gain. I think they're just going to run down the field immediately. I think that it's going to be one of those games where we get to see, improvement areas like red zone efficiency. Obviously, Marcel Reed throwing the deep ball. I think we're going to have time to see that development, right? Because I think A&M is going to jump out to maybe like a 20-0 type of lead, 21, 28, and kind of cruise from there. So I think I'll say 42-17. I think that maybe some cheap scores at the end. I think A&M kind of slows it down. But I think they're going to play a game on offense specifically where they could put up like 50-something points. I think that they're just going to maybe pull back a little bit at the end. And because, again, I think that Mike Elko is looking to improve in certain areas. I don't think he's trying to prove to like the national media who we are or whatever. I think he's just trying to say, like, these are the things we need to work on in week one, going into the week two. And then obviously, they asked me about Notre Dame on Monday. Great answer. Don't care about Notre Dame right now. But it is one of those things where you are always preparing for Notre Dame. So you better get through these first two games looking good and fixing the remaining issues you have. So I think we're on the same track there. I don't know. I always see these games, and I think that the opponent always gets a cheap touchdown to the end. So I always get, for the bettors out there, I think they'll like that. But,
I gotcha. I'm being ultra aggressive for this first one, man.
I hope they are. I want 50. I want like 52. That's why I love that. And I mean, just spank them. Just spank them. Spank both these opponents over the first 2 weeks, because I think and especially I think I speak for A&M fans, like they want to see offensive dominance. They want to see these weapons, these new weapons we've been pushing and talking about all offseason to show out. They want to see the deep pass. They want to see the chunk gains. So show it, do it, and we'll be talking. We'll be giving you flowers every week. But
not only flowers, we will talk about you more and more.
I mean, that's the thing. Like,
guys, if you have made it to this part of the show, thank you for being here. Drop your prediction down below for Texas A&M versus UTSA. As always, make sure you are following Cameron Honesty at Cameron Honesty on X. He does a lot of great writing over at Aggies Wire. Him and his writers have done very well keeping up with Texas A&M athletics coming up to game week. And you can also find me over on X at Torres Cannon, and also on Patreon at the Bell Tower Intel, where we will be covering recruiting for basketball and football, where it's only ramping up from here. So any final words, Cameron?
Yeah, not really. I mean, it's just it's crazy that we're already at game week. I feel like it was April last time we started doing this at one point. It was like April or May, and it felt like the season was never going to get here. And I think we get Auburn Baylor on Friday. We get some good games.
What a weekend.
It's gonna be great. Yeah, Bill Belichick's first game with
Miami Notre Dame on Sunday as well.
So you got football weekend. I think that it does suck. I'll say it does suck. I hate when some of the good games, even as someone, when you cover a team that you're going to miss most of, like LSU Clemson or something, you're just going to see clips. But either way, I think that this game is just so important for A&M. I think that A&M fans really need to just gear up for watching this brand new team kind of prove that, not that we were right, but that all the work they put in the preseason is going to pay off finally. So send you off with that. We'll be back next Tuesday. Same time, 7 p.m. Central Time. Obviously, we're going to be talking about doing a recap, talking about their Week 2 game versus
Utah State,
which will then lead us into, obviously, Notre Dame, and may have Michael Chen back on.
Hey, guys, we'll be here next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tune in.
All right, guys.